Hello everyone. I'm actually at my witchy table today. This is kind of a new setup because I've been doing some work with my incense blend and working with some oracles, and I was watching SORSHA'S new video, new hashtag that's out, Pacing the Tarot. And it's a fabulous hashtag because not everyone has an extensive collection. I think right now my collection is about 40, and I've got a box under this very table of what Sylvain would say a purgatory box, like decks that I really am probably not going to use, but that I can't get rid of for various reasons. And even though 40 decks is a lot to me, I still consider my collection quite small. So, because typically I've always wanted to be in the 20-30 range when it came to deck numbers. But anyways, I love this because, like Sorsha said, it's an inclusive tag that can include anyone in the tarot community, whether their collection is small, big. I typically don't participate in a whole bunch of the deck collection tags. They're beautifully done. I have participated in a few, but I'd literally be showing the same decks over and over and over again, and that gets boring on my part. Those are videos I wouldn't want to see, and they're not videos I want to do. But this was pretty cool. I'm hoping that I get the prompts right because I'm just like jumping in. I'm not jumping in here. I don't really I did pull my decks out for this, my 3 decks. I'm only going to show 3 because that's the prompts. But I think I got the prompts right, so we'll see. I will put them in the description box along with Sorsha's original video. So, the very first prompt is least used deck. And that would be this one, Tarot of Haunted House. This probably could go in all 3 categories. There's a little white book. I hate these tuck boxes that have the little white books because then you can't ever close them the right way. And I don't do tarot bags. But when this came out, I needed it in my collection. I still use it. But it has become one of those seasonal decks. Maybe it's because maybe for some reason I feel like if I get it out, it's going to fill me with Halloween vibes, even though when I use this deck, it doesn't necessarily fill me with Halloween Samhain vibes. The reason I got this was because I've always loved Gothic literature, and this really reminded me of those worlds, the worlds of Anne Radcliffe, of Shirley Jackson, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Seven Gables. So I've always loved Gothic literature. Let's see if you can see these from this angle. Yeah, sort of. So weird. So this, like I said, could go into any of these categories, but I love using this. It's one of those that when I get out, I'm in the right headspace to follow it and to map out. The best thing that I do with this deck, because of its correlation for me to Gothic literature, I love the storytelling method. Using the storytelling method with this deck, that means like lay out plop down, at least 10 cards and tell a story. And that's actually helped me to get to know this deck a little bit. I love the star card. It's just like the epitome of the wish. I used to do this at my bedroom window as a child. And the little secrets that are in these cards are fascinating too, to tell parts of the story, even though some of them don't really have good, like you can't just jump in and see. It's not like a system per se, even though you can definitely tell this is a Rider-Waite-Smith based deck. But there's such a storytelling aspect to the main character, Raven, and the characters of the house, this haunted house. I've always loved the like I said, the characters of the haunted house. This looks so much like Aragorn to me. It's so crazy. Love this Ace of Cups. I love it. It's like washing my hands in the moon. Oh my gosh. Anyways, the characters of the house, there's a bartender, right, who acts as, now this bartender is the devil, but it reminds me of how bartenders stereotypically are the therapist of the neon moon, you know, the neon lights. But there's characters like, here's the butler, right? That's not the butler. I'm sorry, that's the chauffeur. The maid, right? The maids know everything. If you're thinking, like, I think sometimes of Downton Abbey. But then you had the butler, right? And then you have the skeleton in the closet, which is like my all-time favorite hangman ever. And it's just, you follow Raven around the house, you know? Sometimes you get hit with supernatural entities, sometimes you don't. The Lord of the Manor. That's just, this always reminds me of the scene in Jumanji where they're getting chased by the hunter. I was trying to see if there would be one more character in the house. Nope. But isn't this Ace of Wands beautiful? The artwork in this is really great. But like I said, the basis of this deck has always been storytelling, and it tends to go into the gothic genre. It tends to go into supernatural. Not necessarily fantasy, but definitely supernatural. Definitely a story that you would read with a flashlight, you know, in your bed. So kind of mystery, maybe a ghost story, but there's a little bit more involved than a campfire ghost story in it. But it's my least used deck, and I think that the A and B, the subtopic, sub prompts for SORSHA'S prompts was, what could I do to incorporate this more, right? And it could be, this would be a great deck for me to do kind of Anna over at Anna Astral Lady Tarot, or Astral Lady Tarot. She pulled some cards for books that she was reading. This would be great for me. Currently I'm reading a book. Actually, I'm reading two. I'm reading a nonfiction and a fiction. I'm reading The Dark Box, and I'm reading The Italian by Anne Radcliffe. And this deck would be great to like pull cards as I read and get the cards involved in my reading experience. That could be a way that I incorporate it more into my tarot practice instead of just allowing it to sit on the shelf until Samhain time. So that's definitely something that I could do. All right. And then the next prompt is an oldie but a goodie. An oldie but a goodie. Something that's had its 15 minutes of fame, but it's kind of over. No one really talks about it anymore. But it's still a great reader, and it's still a good deck, right? And for me, that is my Forest of Enchantment. Again, I think all three of these decks could go into every single one of these categories for me specifically, but this is a fabulous deck. This reminds me of playing in the woods as a child. It reminds me of fairy tales specifically, whereas the Tarot of the Haunted House makes me think of Gothic literature. So that's for me, that's like an older form of literature. This is childhood literature. So Wizard of Oz, like even Wind in the Willows, like those are some of the tales that, and even fairy tales. I had weird fairy tales growing up, like Rumpelstiltskin, the Moon Babies, Secret Garden, not necessarily Disney style, you know, fairy tales. My mom didn't necessarily like Grimm, but she did like to veer off. And me, I radiated towards storybooks that had the best pictures. And much like SORSHA has told before, the fairy tales and the stories, or the folk tales that have the art of like Hyman, are just stellar. So I actually made this. I loved this deck when it first came out, that I actually made an enchanter's wheel, turned it into a home spell to protect the house, and it still hangs on my front door, even though this came out years ago. But this has a way of getting me back in touch with my inner child, but also getting back in touch with the mystery of fairy tales, and wanting to meet these individuals, wanting to immerse myself in these worlds. Let's see if we can get to some of my, I didn't pull out my favorites, but I love this Badger Hermit. I do love the Hierophant that is like the old tree, because it reminds me of the trees that I had growing up, the ritual tree that I had growing up. But this does wonderful things to the tarot that I want to see. Like, I love the elves in the trees for starlight. That is just ingenious. I love the White Witch here. I always call her the White Witch from Narnia. Anyway, I love that there's so much to explore in these woods, like, well, in this forest, to be honest with you. I dropped a card, sorry. But, like, I mean, like, look at him. He's in a cave of crystals. Like, it's just perfect, right? And then this 9 of Challenges, which would primarily be 9 of Swords. I mean, you see these tree-like figures, they're just shadows. They're not, it's not real, right? But anyway, there's such a greatness in the way that this was done. That it's a fantastic deck. Now, an oldie but goodie, but how could I, again, I think the sub-genre here is, how could I potentially give it its 15 more minutes of fame? Possibly, maybe that's the subgenre. But when I'm working with my inner child, or working with my new baby that's supposed to be coming, you know, at the end of this year, I don't really have the tie to story anymore, to children's stories specifically. Now, I have been known to get out some of my children's books and go through them, but not read them. I just flip through, I look at the pictures. I recently did this with Beauty and the Beast. I went through a Beauty and the Beast kick, and I like researched the original, read the original, but then got my Beauty and the Beast texts out and like went through the pictures, which was a beautiful exercise. But what I could also do, like the Tarot of the Haunted House, is I could incorporate this a little bit more into playing with the books, playing with the literature, and see how that works out. See if I can put these figures in the story somehow, or find these archetypes in the story somehow. Again, I didn't necessarily think that this would go a story, like that both of these decks would go into the story, you know, aspect, but I did, I guess, which is quite organic. I love this card. This is the 10 of Visions. It's the unicorns. Perfect. Ugh. Anyway, Black Shuck. So this is a beautiful, beautiful deck. I love the art. That's how it happened. I'll put these down like this. So I hope I got those sub-prompts, subtopics wrong. Or right. I hope I got them right. But this at least is my oldie but goodie. The one that had its 15 minutes of fame. Hardly no one ever talks about it anymore on the tarot tubes, but it is still a great deck and still a great reader for me. And it's pretty much stays on the top of my drawer. Doesn't get used that often, but it's not forgotten. And then the last prompt is, let's see, a deck that helps you reassess. A deck that helps you reassess what tarot means. I just love decks that tend to shake up what I think about tarot, whether that be in any of the systems. I know that, you know, recently in terms of Marseille, it's been the ancient Italian tarot that has gotten me out of just like the normal Marseille, even though they all are planned out the same. it's just a way that I connect with the Marseille system different that I like. Anyway, and then, you know, what I've done to the Thoth, what other people have done to the Thoth, I tend to go to my studies with that deck anyway all the time, that system. And it's always near and dear to my heart. But then when we're thinking about tarot overall, there have been decks over the years, and I could have pulled out 5 off the top of my head, that shake up what I think I already know about the tarot. And I love to play around with spreads for this specific topic. I love to play around with the deck pairing, like pairing different decks, also different systems, to see what comes out. Also incorporating oracle. But anyways, let's get into the prompt here. This is the Psychic Tarot by John Holland, and this is a deck that I don't reach for very often, but it is one of those decks that changes my mind. And it does a good job of changing my mind into what tarot could be, all it could be, and allowing me to assess my own. I don't believe in. Well, I'm not gonna say I don't believe in them, but I don't believe in my own abilities to be a psychic. It's not necessarily about that for me. Divination. It's not necessarily about psychic readings, fortune telling, future telling, things like that. It's mostly about getting to myself on different levels. And this is great because the mask that sits on top of this deck is the Psychic Tarot. You know, there's subgenres within this deck that make you think it's about psychic, much like people think like this deck has a label. Right? Some people put labels in the names of their decks, like the empathic oracle. You know, so automatically you think you've got to be an empath of some kind to use that deck, but that's not true. And for this is, it's teaching me about myself in a tarot way that's not really a tarot way. Because I could use this as an oracle and still be it'd be just as good, you know? I just love the idea behind this deck. I mean, look at this magician. Like, this is just a powerful magician. The shadow. Triumph. It's a beautiful Chariot card. I love looking at these, like... This isn't that good. I don't like this art particularly. It's beautiful, but I don't particularly like it. I love this, like stepping over this abyss here, this chasm for the 5 of Wands. This violet, I guess they call it in the book, is a violet color. This would be the 5 of Wands, obstacles and challenges. It's just great. Transformation. It's like some kind of fairy. But I'm fully in my own body and in my own head. And I can see myself and some of the people I interact with in the cards, which is great. Also includes chakra cards. But it's not only the people aspect. It's about the fact that the messages on the cards, you know, wisdom for the Hierophant instead of the Hierophant, you know, it turns it just slightly to where you think about it a different way, along with the images, right? And it does allow me to reassess what I think I know about the tarot, and it's just been a beautiful experience. Look at this, choose wisely. 7 of Cups here. 7. I mean, usually we see like fairy thoughts, these cups filled with all kinds of weird, crazy stuff. But the fact that this person is sitting on the dock and they are looking out on the horizon, much like if you look back on the 3 of Wands, that's kind of what I see here, but in a cup way. So in a more emotional way. And what way to portray the 7 of Cups, but in a watery horizon way, if that makes any sense. So anyway, this is just a lovely, lovely deck. Again, don't get it out very often, but when I do, it does make me think of tarot in different and beautiful ways. So look at that. It's beautiful. So, okay, that is the Psychic Tarot. Go one step further to give these decks their 15 minutes of fame. Let's pull a card from each deck, because it's about shopping your shelves, right? It's about going through what all your deck collection could be, what all your deck collection is, and not taking your deck collection for granted. Like, just the other day, I was on some website and I was looking up tarot decks, and I only have one on my wish list, and that wasn't even the one I was looking for. I was just kind of looking around at all the like newer stuff that's coming out. No, I won't buy any of that. It's just always nice to like window shop, but there's something about shopping your shelves and not taking your collection at face value, not taking it for granted, and being happy that you have, even if you have one or two decks, you know, being happy with that, being happy where you're at on your tarot journey. That's important. So, okay. All right. Card I pulled, 3 of Swords. Wow. Oh, that's funny. This is a great shuffle for Enchantment. Uh-oh. I misspoke. It's acting like a 5-year-old. As soon as you compliment them, there's something inside the grocery store that pisses you off. This shuffle's so great. Alright, what came out of Forest? Enchantment. Uh-oh. 5 of Visions. And last, Psychic. I have to be rough with Psychic because it's so worn out, but it's still really stiff. Cut the deck. 3 of Pentacles. Recognition and reward. Now we have 2 3s here, 3 of Swords and the 3 of Pentacles, right? So to me, it could, these decks are talking about, well, I feel like the 3s, well, having both 3s means less about sorrow and reward, or working towards a reward. It means more heart open, like opening up the heart, right? So these decks open up, allow me to open up in heart-centered ways, right? But then to have the 5 of Visions here, I love that, like I said, we're opening up the heart with these 3 or these 2 3s, okay? In harsh, that may be harsh ways, painful ways, like truth-telling type decks, and then it could be there's great reward that comes with that, right? But then to have the 5 of Visions, it's this lovely depiction of the Princess and the Frog, where the girl lost the golden ball and she has to kiss the frog, blah 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 blah. Anyway, this reminds me that you chase after the gold ball, which is all the new stuff, like I've been doing, chasing the new, chasing the next best golden tarot deck, But you instead of allowing yourself to be open, you allow yourself to follow and allow yourself to get caught by the glitter and the gold, and not necessarily the frog. You kind of stumble and you meet this ugly toad looking figure who you have to endure. And the ugly toad could be your relationship with deck consumption, your relationship to your decks. Like I said, taking them for granted, taking your collection for granted. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you would take them for granted, or that you do. It's just, I think that these are what these 3 decks are telling me inside this prompt, is to allow these decks to teach me more about myself, teach me more about the rewards that I can get with doing that, using tarot as a tool, and then not getting caught up in the chase. That sometimes it's good to do my own type of like scouting before we just blindly follow the glittery path. So anyway, I think this was a nice message. So go check out SORSHA'S original video below and check out the tag. I'm curious to see. I know this seems kind of fast to her video, but I was really intrigued. Much love.